They say you can hear America from a train window if you listen close enough. Nat King Cole heard it in 1948, riding south through small towns and open fields. What he saw that day didn't make headlines, but it made him the artist we remember today. There's something about a train that makes you see the world differently. The rhythm of the rails, the way towns appear and disappear like memories, the faces and windows you'll never see again. In the spring of 1948, Nat King Cole boarded a southbound train in Chicago. He was already a star by then. His trio had been filling nightclubs from coast to coast. The records were selling. The phone kept ringing with offers. But success in those days meant something different if your skin was the wrong color. It meant traveling through a country that loved your voice but didn't always love you. Nat settled into his seat that afternoon with a newspaper and a cup of coffee. He was heading to a string of performances through the South: Memphis, Birmingham, Atlanta, cities where the music was hot and the audiences were divided, where he'd walk on stage to thunderous applause, then leave through the back door because the front was for white folks only. He'd made this trip before. He knew what to expect, but this time would be different. The train pulled out of Union Station just after 2 o'clock. Nat watched the city fall away. The tall buildings gave way to neighborhoods, then factories, then open land, the kind of America most people never slowed down enough to see. Back in those days, train travel wasn't rushed like today. You had time to think, time to watch. The countryside rolled by like a slow movie, and you were part of it, whether you wanted to be or not. Somewhere south of Springfield, Nat looked up from his paper. A little girl was standing in the aisle, maybe 7 or 8 years old. She had pigtails and a Sunday dress. She was staring at him with wide eyes. Her mother noticed and quickly pulled her back. "Don't bother the man," she whispered. But the little girl kept looking over her shoulder as they walked away, not with fear, with curiosity, with something that looked like recognition. Nat smiled and went back to his paper. But the moment stayed with him. He had no idea that something he was about to witness on this ride would echo in his music for years to come. The train kept rolling through small towns with grain elevators and water towers, past farms where laundry hung on lines and children played in yards, through crossings where cars waited and drivers waved at nothing in particular, just being friendly, just being American. Nat had grown up in Chicago, big city rhythms, fast pace, but his parents came from the South. They'd told him stories about red dirt roads and front porch evenings, about communities that took care of each other because nobody else would, about music that came from the soil itself. He'd heard those stories, but he'd never really felt them. The afternoon light changed as they moved deeper south. It got softer somehow, golden. It spread across the fields like honey. The scenes drifting past him looked like frames from an old painting coming to life. Nat watched a farmer walking behind a plow, moving in a straight line across the earth, slow, steady, patient. There was a rhythm to it, the same rhythm he'd been chasing in his music all these years. Not the fast bebop that was taking over the clubs, not the flashy runs that made people cheer, something older, something underneath. The train stopped in a small town. Nat didn't catch the name, just a platform and a station house and a few people waiting. An old man sat on a bench with a guitar case beside him. He wasn't playing, just sitting, watching the train like he'd watched 1,000 trains before. Their eyes met for just a second. The old man nodded. Nat nodded back. The whistle blew. The train moved on. But the truth of what he'd seen wouldn't hit him until later. Something was beginning to shift inside him. That night, in his sleeping car, Nat couldn't settle down. His mind kept returning to that window, to the passing landscape, to the faces and places that had flickered by. Passengers traveling these southern and midwestern lines often saw the country's changing character unfold right outside their window. He thought about all the songs he'd recorded, the standards, the pop tunes, the clever arrangements that made the trio famous. They were good songs, beautiful songs, but they weren't his songs, not really. And there was still one more realization waiting for him. Somewhere between sleep and waking, Nat heard something, not with his ears, with something deeper. It was the rhythm of the rails beneath him, the breath of the land outside, the heartbeat of a country that was complicated and beautiful and broken and whole all at the same time. He heard America. For the first time, he felt the true source of his music, something deeper than melody or rhythm. Not the America of the radio or the movies, not the America of the headlines, the real America, the one that existed in small moments, in the space between places, in the quiet dignity of ordinary people living ordinary lives. By the time the train pulled into Memphis the next morning, something had shifted inside Nat King Cole. Memphis rose in the morning haze like a city waking from a dream. He couldn't explain it, didn't try to, but he felt it. That day, Nat didn't just see America, he recognized the artist he was becoming. Moments like these don't just change a musician, they change the music itself. The performances that week were different. His band noticed. The way he lingered on certain notes, the way he let silence do more work, the way he seemed to be reaching for something beyond the melody, something the audience could feel even if they couldn't name it. When Nat got back to California, he started writing, not the upbeat numbers the record company wanted, something else. Songs that breathed, songs that took their time, songs that painted pictures of the America he'd seen from that train window. What he was about to create next would quietly shape the artist he would become. And the first proof of that change would arrive sooner than anyone expected. Some of you may remember when Nature Boy came out later that year. It was strange for a pop song, slow, mystical, almost like a hymn. The record company wasn't sure about it. Too unusual, they said, won't sell. But something in that song connected. It went to number one and stayed there. People couldn't explain why they loved it. They just did. Because underneath the strange melody and the unusual words, there was something true. Something that felt like the land itself was singing. Nat kept riding trains throughout his career, even when he could afford to fly, even when it would have been easier. Because those hours between cities, watching America roll by, kept him connected to something essential. It was a kind of understanding only earned on quiet miles of open track. He'd see cotton fields in the south, wheat fields in the Midwest, mountains in the distance, rivers cutting through the land. And he'd remember that afternoon in 1948 when he realized that music wasn't just about notes and rhythms. It was about bearing witness, about holding space, about honoring the places and faces that make up the fabric of who we are. And his transformation would continue in ways no one expected. In later years, when Nat became one of the first black performers to host his own television show, he brought that same patience to the screen. He didn't rush. He let the music breathe. He created space for beauty to unfold. The quiet places between the notes had become his signature. Some people didn't understand it. They wanted more flash, more entertainment. But others felt it. They recognized something real. The train ride in 1948 didn't make headlines. No one wrote about it. There are no photographs. Just a man on a train, looking out a window, seeing his country for maybe the first time. Really seeing it. But if you listen to Nat King Cole's music from that point forward, you can hear it. You can hear the patience of the farmer behind the plow, the dignity of the old man with the guitar, the curiosity in a little girl's eyes, the rhythm of the rails, the breath of the land. You can hear America, not the America that shouts, the America that whispers, the one that exists in small moments, in the space between notes, in the quiet beauty of ordinary things. Maybe that's why his music still feels like a hand on your shoulder, steady, warm, and unhurried. Nat King Cole took that train ride more than 75 years ago, but the music he created from that moment still carries us, still reminds us to slow down, to look out the window, to listen for the heartbeat underneath the noise. Because sometimes the most important journeys aren't about where you're going. They're about what you see along the way and what you choose to carry with you when you arrive. Some journeys don't just move you across the map, they move you deeper into yourself. Even now you can still hear that journey in every song he left behind. If you've carried his music with you over the years, you already know what I mean. Do you remember the first time you heard Nat King Cole? What song of his brings back the strongest memory for you? Share your memory in the comments below.